Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thanks for coming to my channel. I appreciate you visiting. If you wouldn't mind hitting the like button before you leave today, that would help out a great deal. It helps YouTube find my channel and promote it. Um, Today, I'm going to do an interesting project that's based on a piece of fruit. And I'm going to make a kind of a kiwi-shaped pendant. And this is because over on my Patreon every month, we have a theme that my wife and I decide and give them to choose. Like last month we did, what did we do? Music. I may have the months mixed up, but like one month we did music and one month we did architecture. And the idea is to inspire you to make a piece based on something that is related to that. And so this month's is fruits and vegetables, and so I'm going to make a kiwi pendant. So before we get started, though, I wanted to thank my subscribers here on YouTube. We just passed 4,300. Thank you so much. I appreciate your support, your comments, your nice suggestions, and you guys are awesome. I also wanted to thank my people over on Patreon who are paying for my premium content. They are forming a great community over there. We're sharing some cool ideas, and they're posting some really pretty stuff that they've made, and it's just a good place over there. So thank you guys for your support. If you're interested in that, you can check the video description for information about my Patreon. You can buy me a coffee if you just want to support the channel by giving me a little tip for my time. And there's also a link to my website if you're interested in purchasing jewelry. And there's even a merch store if you want to get, like, for instance, my design idea book, which seems to be one of the more popular things. It's got nice graph paper in it that you can draw on. I've used it frequently since I started doing a channel. So check those things out if you're interested in that. But let's get started on this project. So I looked at some pictures of kiwis that have been sliced in half, and they have kind of a cool, relatively symmetrical pattern, so I sketched something up. Actually, I just started experimenting last night during class. There's a lot of guidelines that I drew here to help keep things sort of consistent, and you can see I didn't do things accurately to where they come together, but that's the basic idea if you look at a kiwi from the end of it. And I'll show you a picture in the video here. I don't have a printer, so I can't print one out here. And so last night during class, I was just fiddling around, and I came up with this, which is kind of the start when I was just using some scrap that I had laying around. And I think that's kind of going to be a good look. And I'm going to put kind of, kiwis are green, so on the inside anyway. And so I'm going to use a Peridot, which is kind of a pretty color and similar to the color of kiwis on the inside, as a central stone there. And then I think I'm going to do kind of what I would call a pill bail, where it's just two discs of silver with a hole running through it between for both the chain to run through and this loop that we attach to the pendant. This is 18 gauge round I'm going to use for most of it, some little scrap wire for the balls, and I probably will use 14 gauge square for the outside here. And I'm not sure about the bail. We'll deal with that when we come to it. But the Peridot is about 5mm, and we're going to bezel set that with some 3/16 inch 26 gauge fine silver bezel strip. But I'll probably file it a little bit shorter because it doesn't need to be that tall. So let's start with the bezel for the stone. Here's the Peridot, actually. Pretty little Peridot. You can see that. usually mark these about the width of the pick beyond where they meet, as long as I have it wrapped pretty tightly around the stone. Sometimes it's hard with these little ones to get it super tight around them, especially if you have big clunky fingers like me. A little overzealous with my spraying there. Oh, incidentally, for my projects, I generally use hard silver sheet solder and My-T-Flux, which is a spray-on flux that you can get from Rio Grande, who is not a sponsor. Although I would be a sponsor, or I would take them as a sponsor. I'm just reshaping this back into the shape of the stone. I always make them into an angular shape in order to get a nice clean solder seam. It always makes it easier for me. Not everybody does that, and it's okay if you don't. If you have a jump ring mandrel, this would be a good time to use that if you wanted to. I never used to have one of these, and somebody gave me one. It's a little too small for this one almost. Just barely. Also kind of use your bail making pliers if you wanted to. Or your round nose pliers, so those work just fine too. Either way, let's check the size now. That's pretty good. I think we're good on the size. Since we're doing a faceted stone in a bezel setting, I'm going to create a step bezel by using some 18 gauge round wire and just put a couple of loops in there, little jump rings stacked on top of each other to lift it up enough so that the pavilion doesn't stick out through the back. You could do this, there's a number of ways to make step bezels too. You don't have to do it this way, you can do it in whatever your preferred method is. It's just kind of the way I do it most of the time. Oops. Or you can buy step bezel. I think they make it pre-made. Generally when I'm doing this and I cut the rings, I cut them a little bit bigger than I need so I can gradually snip them down in order to get them to fit in there snugly. Because if you cut too much off, you end up with a little gap on the side, and that looks a little bit amateurish, I think, when you're done. It's best to avoid that. Nobody wants to be producing work that looks amateurish. I'm kind of excited for this one. It's kind of fun when you can find a kind of a cool pattern in nature and you can make something decorative to kind of bring out, you know, an aspect of it into something permanent you can wear. Kind of like making like little pieces that look like animals and stuff are sometimes fun. I made some lobster earrings a while back, which were kind of cute. That looks pretty good. This one I think is less well done, so I'm going to put that one on top so you won't be able to see it as well. Tuck it in there. One thing you want to make sure is they're both sitting flat. One nicely nestled up against the other one. Yeah. I'm going to just flux this, and then I'm going to make a little kind of pile of 2 or 3 pieces of solder there. And then I'm going to set this on top of it and we'll solder it in. Then I usually just kind of file this flat on the bottom. So I'm going to set that to the side for a moment. Let's take a look at our picture here. I measure it to make these little pieces in the middle here. I measured them out, and 30 millimeters got me, when I bent them in half, to be about a little under 15 millimeters, which it works out like that. And then sometimes I'll, if I need to, I'll snip them off just a little bit to where they fit just perfectly. And I'll use this kind of as a template, although I don't think we'll run into this problem here. You can slightly adjust the width of things as you go. The other piece that's going to go is just a little piece between each of them. It goes out to the outside edge. So I'm going to make a whole bunch of these little V-shaped ones. So let's measure out a 30 millimeter piece. So right there. Oopsie. And we'll keep that as a template. You always want to make an extra one of these guys when you're cutting a whole bunch of the same thing. So there's one to keep over there as our template. I'll cut a few more of these off of here. So I'm gonna, if you need to, you can find the center. I can usually eyeball it pretty well though. But I'm gonna go ahead and try and bend this in half in the center. This has to be pretty close. Like I said, we're going to trim off just a little bit. Let's do that a few times. I made these guys pretty wide. I think on this one I'm going to make the little tapered points up here a little narrower and longer maybe. I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm doing something that has a repeated pattern, I kind of find it soothing, because you have to, by the time you're done making all the individual components, you're pretty good at making the individual components. Sometimes you go back and throw away some of the ones, well, not throw away, but redo some of the initial ones you did. When I look at these, I want them to be a little bit narrower, like I said, than the initial one that I made. So I'm gonna move the bend that way a little bit from where it was originally, and I'm gonna bend it inwards like that. Flip it over. Try and do it about the same distance down. Bend it like that. So you can see that. And I'm going to push them open a little bit. And then I'm going to start shallowing that bend a little bit by squeezing it. Okay. Usually by that time you're starting to get close to where they come together. You can kind of line them up so they're kind of like that, except see, this is much wider than I wanted it to be. I want it to be a little narrower than that. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze it down a bit. That, and try and neaten up these spots where it bends and everything. It's more like that, I think. It's going to go like that. So, and then the other thing I'm going to do, I need to come together and meet there and be at about that long. So I'm going to snip off the ends just a skosh. So like maybe a millimeter. I do it kind of straight like that. And then I'll use that one as a guide for all the other ones, so they're just a little bit shorter than that. Let's see, for me, for these ones, they're ending up being about, well, maybe 13 millimeters long compared to the 15, which it would have been, sort of, well, close to 14 or 15, since I measured out 30, but that's pretty close. So I'm going to go ahead and make a whole bunch of those, but I'm not going to make you watch me make a whole bunch of those. One thing I am going to do, though, is I'm also going to cut some pieces. They don't need to be much longer than about that, which is probably 3/8 of an inch, or maybe 10 millimeters. And those are going to be soldered in like that. So I'm going to cut a bunch of those too that are about the right length. And we'll make a little circle for the middle here too. And then there will be a border going around the outside. And we also have to make some balls to go in there, like for those. So quite a bit of fabricating these little things, so I'm not going to make you watch me like I said. So you got the basic idea so far. Then we'll come back and we'll make some balls and we'll solder this all together. Okay, so now you can kind of see what I have going on here, and as you can see, I think probably the best way to go about this to get these all to meet in here is I'll need to make the ring just a tiny bit bigger than that. And I'm also going to individually solder all of these ends together, I think, first, so I can kind of round the ends a little bit so they match up to the curve of that stone nicely, or the ring nicely. So I think that'll be my next step, is soldering those little pieces together. And I have some spares too. It used to take me a really long time to do stuff like this, you know, because I'd have to balance a little piece of solder on each one. Okay, I'm just going to use a worn down white abrasive silicone wheel, and I'm going to curve those all just a little bit on the inside to kind of match each other, and so they'll match the curve of a ring too. So I'll be right back. Okay, I took the Dremel and I kind of rounded out the ends there, and I think I made a little, this is the original ring I had in there, which is a little bit smaller than this, and so I made one slightly bigger, but I think that's still just a little bit too small, so I'm gonna cut one of these and see how that one works. So I feel like that's gonna get me a little closer. I also need to make sure when I solder these little wires in that they're all pretty much the same distance from the ends of these little peaks here. So the trick will be finding a flat enough spot on the soldering surface. That one's causing me problems because there's a little bump in the pad there, so I'm going to leave him be for now. And I'll probably, after I get all the rest of these soldered in, add another one. Just find a little flatter spot on the pad. Okay, so I'm going to cut a whole bunch of little tiny pieces of solder again, and we're going to solder these together. Okie dokie. So a little flux. I'm going to kind of dribble here so things don't move too much. Yeah, they should probably pretty easily solder to that center ring. The rest of these I'm going to have to, go back and add some solder to. So that's what we'll be doing here. I believe that's all together. So you can see why pick soldering is handy in situations like this, because you can pretty precisely place where you want to go. Okay, so we got the basic idea going on here. We need to make some balls now, because if you look at the drawing here, we got little balls in between each of these, and there's 2 on each of these, so we need 24 balls, because there ended up being 12 of these little pointy parts here. So we need 24, 2 for each one. I'm thinking they don't need to be huge. So let's look at maybe 5 millimeters. My first thought was that was too small, but maybe not. Maybe I need a little bit smaller than that. Let's try going about 3 millimeters. Whoops. I think that's a little more manageable. Okay, so about this long right here. Not that long. Oops. Okay, so I'm just going to gradually add them onto here as we go. And, I need to cut some more solder probably. I had one of those moments where I forgot that I was filming. Okay, and I already fluxed in. I could have sweated a little solder onto the balls in advance, but I just put them in here. I don't imagine they have to be perfectly lined up, since it's supposed to represent something sort of organic here. So I kind of deliberately, since it's wider at the top than the skinnier part in the middle, I soldered them to one side, another side, once in the middle, to just the two balls, so that you get kind of a random seed pattern. Make it look more like a natural thing than something that's perfectly symmetrical. So we need to figure out how big of a circle we want this to be over here. I don't want it to be huge. Oh, one other thing. I just had a ball fall off, and I meant to say this. You always want to really try and pry these off of here before you get too much further. So I guess what I'm saying, and don't take this as a crass double entendre, but you really need to pick your balls hard before you sell this to somebody. So there's nothing more embarrassing than having your balls fall off. So, and since I had that one fall off, where did he go? There you are. Okay, little fellow. When I first started doing this, I remember I made a ring where it had little silver balls going all the way around the stone, I think. And I was new at this, and I wasn't very good at it, probably. So a few days later, I got a call, and that person's ring ball had fallen off. And ever since then, I've tried to be real careful about ensuring that you have a really good solder joint holding things on there. So now, like I said, I'm going to figure out where to cut this off. It's going to be slightly bigger than my drawing here, I think. But I don't want it to be too much bigger. I want this to be sort of compact. But we need to come up with a circle of square wire. So let me find my 14 gauge square. So if I want to use my math skills today, get a basic idea. If you do the diameter that you're looking for, 10, 20, 30, 43 millimeters maybe? 42 or 43. If you do pi times diameter equals circumference, so you get 3.14. There's no extra charge for this math lesson. 3 times 2 is 6. All places, so 131.88 millimeters should be about the size we need. So let's call it 133. Let's say, just to be safe. You didn't know I was going to inflict math on you today, did you? Although we're making a pretty geometric design, which is kind of cool. I like stuff like that. It's almost like a mandala if you're into that sort of thing. I'm just going to make this into a circle. With square wire, whenever you bend it like this, it's going to try and twist a little bit on you. So if you're making it into a circle, you're going to have to stop and correct that twist periodically. But mostly what I want to do is I want to put it over top here, get an idea about how big I want it to be. So I'm thinking that's pretty good, about like that. I think that'll be nice. About silver dollar sized. Alright, I probably have enough solder here to solder that closed, so I think I'll just use that. Okay, so I'm going to borrow an engineering machinist kind of trick. And in order to get this cut pretty exact, I'm going to color these purple. They make this ink stuff you can buy that a lot of machinists use. But we can just use some Sharpie today. Generally keep some of these T-pins around, what I think of as macrame pins from when my mom did macrame when I was a kid. She used these things. Pretty handy for a lot of stuff though. I'm going to make a scratch with the purple mark here. It'd be easy to see pretty precisely where that crosses then, rather than trying to make a big thick mark with a marker. That way I can just cut it off wherever I can see the little scratch. Okay, so I got this fitted in there. I just need to pick solder all those little points of contact now, which should be about 12 of them. Just got to work my way around the circle. I think we got everything attached. Okay, now let's leave that pickle for a while. So I was going to do kind of a pill bail, which is I've sandwiched between two pieces of sheet. I knocked out with my little hole puncher, or disc cutter they're called. I cut out a piece of 18 for the front and a piece of 22 for the back. Could have used either one for both if I wanted, I suppose, but it doesn't really matter. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a vertical wire on this one, a vertical wire on this one, facing upwards on the bottom and the top, and then I will just file them flat and put this on top of that, and then we'll have kind of a bail that'll work for kind of a round look. So, but I find myself some 14 gauge round. So what I'll probably do is I will flux the ends of these, flux this, pick up a little bit of the solder on the ends of the wires while I'm holding with the tweezers, and then plop them down on there. I just picked up a piece of solder with a melted onto the bottom. Heat this sheet up to the soldering temperature and just hold it there till it solders down. Put another piece over here. Same thing. And the chains I use are about 14 gauge round width or thereabouts. So this should give me plenty of room, I would think. And what I'm going to do, like I said, I want to cut these off so there will be enough room for the chain to go through and the wire loop that I'm going to put at the top of the pendant. So a couple of ways I can approach this probably. I can sweat a little bit of solder on the ends of these. I can sweat some solder on here. I could sweat it onto both. Either way, I'm just going to flip it on top and heat it till it flows again. So. Let's see how that turned out. Should I mirror that shape? Or should I just make a V? I kind of feel like I should mirror that shape, or the ends of these little they almost look like crystals, but I don't know. I need to leave it with one side open so I can get this over it, and then solder it closed. And I think I'm just going to center it over that one, and I'll solder it just on the one side. Alrighty. So I think we got that hot. I'm going to go ahead, we still got movement on the veil. Good. So I'm going to go ahead and pickle that, and then once it's cleaned up after a bit, I'll polish it, show you how to set the stone, and we'll be done. Okay, I got this cleaned up, and I got it kind of filed down to about the appropriate level for this stone. So I'm going to go ahead and set this. Most people use a pusher or a burnishing tool. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. This stage is called burnishing. It's where you rub that top edge, kind of make it smooth down into the stone. Alright, so we got ourselves kind of what to me looks like a Kiwi pendant. I'll put a picture next to it up in the video so you can see where my inspiration came from. But yeah, I'll take some pictures and put it at the end of the video so you can get a better look at it. Okay, well that was the Kiwi pendant video. I hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to hit the like button before you leave. That really helps me out a lot. YouTube uses those kinds of things to help decide which channels to promote. And so if you like my channel, that helps me out by sending YouTube that message. So before you leave, don't forget to check out the links in the video description. There's stuff about my Patreon. There's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you just want to give me a tip for my time. You can buy merch, coffee mugs, t-shirts. Oh, we have a cool design t-shirt coming up pretty soon, so keep your eye out for that in the merch store. But yeah, thanks for watching. I appreciate you visiting. Take care. Happy silversmithing.